Hey designer protein fans, this is Chrissy Arsenault. I am a registered dietitian and I'm also an ambassador for Designer Protein. It's honestly one of my favorite protein brands and I was so excited to partner with the team at Designer Protein to bring you a healthy grocery shopping tour. So this is virtual and we won't be actually walking through the aisles, but it's based on Trader Joe's. Now, I'm based out of Colorado Springs, Colorado. I know many of you have different Trader Joe's setups, so it'll be a little different depending on where you're joining us from, but welcome and thank you so much. And thanks to the folks at Trader Joe's as well for also providing us great products and also carrying Designer Protein for us to shop on. So tonight there's a couple of things that I'm going to be going over with you guys. Super excited to be here. First, we're going to talk about guidelines for healthy grocery shopping. Now, what does that really mean? A lot of us are going back into the grocery now instead of doing online or in-store pickup. So it's good to always get a refresher on some of the tips and tricks that we might be able to use here. Secondly, we're going to go through a nutrition label. There's a lot of information on labels and I'm going to talk you through some of the things to watch out for, especially for those packaged items that have all this mumbo jumbo on the back. So we'll go through all of those in great detail. And then lastly, just tips and tricks to incorporate healthy items into your grocery shopping and your meals. So that includes items like my favorite Designer Protein product, but also some other products as well. So I did want to let you guys know also that there will be a giveaway. So tomorrow morning I am going to be posting from my Instagram, the Pink Pamplemousse, on 3 Trader Joe's bundles that will be given out. So each bundle, again, super exciting. It has the Designer Protein Whey, a Designer Whey French Vanilla, Designer Whey Gourmet Chocolate, an Aria Women's Wellness Protein, and Designer Protein Shaker Bottle. So it's a starter kit to get you trying some of the Designer Protein products. Some of you might be big fans already and love the product and just want extra for your pantry. Some of you might be trying it for the very first time, which in this case, super exciting for you guys and definitely want you to try the product. So stay tuned, more details on that later, and I'll remind you guys at the end of the live presentation as well. So, like I mentioned, grocery shopping can be confusing, challenging, lots of things to navigate, right? There's a lot of different brands, a lot of products, nutrition claims that you see on things. And when our focus is health, this complicated environment can be still approached with the goal of trying to fulfill and nourish our bodies with the healthiest food possible. So today we'll go through the basics of nutrition, how to choose whole foods, and how to find them in the store. But in general, the majority of our shopping should be done around the perimeter of the store. So you walk into Trader Joe's, right? And there's all these aisles in the middle, and then there's aisles that are on the outside. So the ones that are on the outside periphery or the perimeter is where the majority of your healthiest fresh whole foods are going to be found. And then in the middle, that's where you're going to find more of the convenient but tempting products. And especially when you check out too, there's like the little chocolate bars at Trader Joe's and other things that you might be tempted to grab as an impulse buy. So whenever possible, you want to try to stick to the perimeter of the store. That's where your fruits, veggies, fish, meat, and dairy are going to be found. So today we'll go through each of these sections in detail, but first let's take a step back and go through some tips and tricks before you even get to the store. And grocery shopping is almost like a job interview. So if you fail to plan, you're planning to fail. So before you walk into that grocery store, Trader Joe's or wherever it may be, make sure you have a plan. It would be like walking into a job interview without knowing what position you're applying for and who you're talking to, right? So you want to make sure you have a game plan, just as with anything. So some tips and tricks that have worked for some of the clients that I've worked with, and personally for me as well, is a couple of things. Eat before you go. If you're hungry, again, and you're gonna see a lot of those impulse buys and see things like chips and chocolate and other things that you might be tempted to just grab while you're shopping. So if possible, try to have a light snack or have a meal before you go into the grocery store. Or if that's not possible and you're kind of in a rush, then some things that might work are chewing on gum or sugar-free candy, something just to keep yourself busy and hydrated and full so that you aren't tempted to just grab everything in plain sight. Planning ahead is also key. So make sure that you have some sort of plan to, in terms of your meals that you're gonna have throughout the week, what snacks you're gonna eat, where and how you're going to eat. And I like to always make up a grocery list before I go too. So some of you might like writing it down on pen and paper. Others like to put it on a phone. There's also apps to help you keep track of, what food groups and what foods you're actually choosing. So consider all these things as you are planning a trip to the grocery store. And some other considerations as you approach this too are how much prep time is it actually going to take to make a certain meal. You might have really good aspirations over the weekend, but then the week kicks in and you're like, hey, I'm too busy to actually make this meal on my own. I'm just gonna grab McDonald's or whatever. So think about how much time it takes. Think about the costs of things too. Can you put the same ingredients in different meals and try to incorporate all the ingredients that you do actually get at the grocery? And then leftovers too are always helpful. So if you grab, if you have food that you can prepare at one time and then save for later, that's always helpful to make sure that you can save some time there, especially if you're busy and on the go. And lastly, think about any diet and nutrition restrictions too. You know your body. And as it pertains to things like gluten, you want to make sure that you are on top of everything that you have to be mindful of before you even walk into that grocery store. And when you're at the store, there's a couple of things and some ground rules. So let's go through that as well. So when you go into the grocery store, first read the front label. So it's speed reading, right? You don't have time to look through absolutely everything that's in the store. But if you grab any food product, look at the front and look at what things are being advertised. So you'll see things like fortified, enriched, plus, added. Usually those are things that mask the fact that the product might be highly processed, so keep an eye out for that. Zero trans fat does not always mean zero trans fat. So according to the rules, up to 0.5 grams per serving is still considered 0 grams. So it may still contain hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated oils that are not going to be so great on your blood cholesterol. So keep an eye out for that. Light and reduced calorie. We see this one a lot, especially for weight loss things, right? So think about whether it is actually truly still a whole food. So what I mean by that is when things are reduced or light, etc., it often means that there's other things to compensate for it. So we see a lot of sweeteners being added. If there's less sugar, then there's more salt added and other things that are going on there. And next, flip the food around and look at the back. So you'll be looking for things that are on the ingredient list. The fewer ingredients, the better, typically, the product, but it depends on what kind of product it is. So things that you're going to be looking for are high fructose corn syrup, artificial colors, artificial flavoring, etc., and trying to avoid those as much as possible. For things like meats, etc., you'll be avoiding benzoates, nitrates, nitrites, etc., and trying to minimize any of those ingredients that are added to foods versus things that are naturally occurring. And then next you'll look at the nutrition facts label. So this is where majority of the nutritional value is actually outlined. So it helps you determine, does this food meet my needs, and trying to figure out what things are great about it and what things are not so great about it. So that's always a good indicator as well. So for those of you who have not seen a nutrition label before, I will pull up the one for designer protein. So here we see at the top how many servings there are. So this is the French vanilla that I got at Trader Joe's. There's 11 servings in this container. So that means I can get 11 protein shakes out of it. So that's at the very top where it says nutrition facts, and then under it there's 11 servings per container. And then the serving size where it says 1 scoop, that's what the rest of the nutrition label is based on, meaning that, you know, if you see 110 calorie, it means each scoop has 110 calories. So that's the best way to think about it. So the serving sizes matter because if you look at the entirety of the tub and let's say hypothetically you were drinking 11 protein shakes, it means that you would have to do some math to multiply based on X number of scoops, how much nutrition you're getting in terms of calories, fat, etc., that are in the amount of food that you're eating. So as you look at this, the number of calories, based on the recent nutrition labeling changes, the calories has been highlighted in bold and bigger so that you can see that information very prominently. So if you're going through the grocery aisles, it's very easy to be able to just quickly scan this if that's something that you're tracking. If not, no worries. And then as you go down, you'll see total fat and then the types of fats that are in here. So typically, milk proteins do contain different fats, right? Because milk contains fat itself. So if you get milk proteins, there will be a little bit of fat. You want to try to minimize the amount of saturated fat from foods. And you see here, it's pretty low in saturated fat and doesn't have much of other fats in there. And then there's cholesterol. So again, similar to the saturated fat, a lot of the cholesterol comes from animal proteins and animal-based foods like eggs, dairy, and meat. So trying to minimize that as much as possible. But there are studies that now show that dietary cholesterol doesn't necessarily lead to blood cholesterol. So something to keep in mind. Next, we see sodium. So that's synonymous with salt. And the average American eats more sodium in a day than what is recommended. So I believe the average was around 3,400 milligrams in a day for the average American, whereas the recommendation is anywhere from 1,500 to 2,300, depending on your medical conditions, of course, and your dietary preferences. So trying to keep the sodium down is great. And for this product, you see the sodium is low, which is good to see. And then carbs. Carbs are always demonized, but in reality, it is a great source of fuel, and it's a primary energy source that your body uses first as fuel. So before your body goes and uses fat or protein, it first looks to carbs as the source of energy. So the carbs here are important. Dietary fiber helps you stay full, and we see there's 3 grams here from a probiotic blend that's in there, so great to see. And then sugars, again, it's broken down into naturally occurring sugars and then added sugars. With the recent labeling change, the added sugars has been added on. So that helps to show how much of your calories are coming from added versus naturally occurring. And in this case, there's only 1 gram of added sugar. And then lastly, you see protein, and this is where designer protein really excels. So depending on your protein needs, you may need to supplement with a product like designer protein. A lot of you are runners, weightlifting, etc. So make sure that you're getting enough protein. And in this scoop of designer whey protein, for example, there's 20 grams of protein in there. And then lastly, there's essential vitamins and minerals. I like to call out there's different vitamin B complexes here to help with energy, metabolism, and some other essential functions in your body. So super, super important. So now that we've talked about the nutrition label, let's get started on our virtual healthy grocery tour. It's the fun part. So I took a couple snapshots at Trader Joe's that I'm gonna share with you guys. The first being produce. So fruits and veggies, it's one of the first things that you see as you walk into Trader Joe's. As a rule of thumb, I like to at least recommend 5 servings of fruits and veggies in a day as a bare minimum. And this is where planning ahead helps, because if you don't eat any fruits and veggies by the time you get to dinner time, it's virtually impossible to try to stuff everything into that one meal. So make sure you spread out, you know, here's when I'm gonna eat some fruit and here's where I'm gonna eat some veggies throughout your day, so that you know what to expect as you walk into that grocery store. Eating the rainbow is important when it comes to produce, so choose a variety of colors. My picture here probably is not the best bet for it because everything is green and yellow, but in general, you know, you want to try to get a variety of different colors when it comes to produce. And think about what it takes to actually prepare the fruits and veggies too. So, you know, watermelons, melons, like great, but are you actually going to take it home and cut it up to make sure that you have enough throughout the week? So those are considerations to make sure that you'll actually end up eating it. Or if you find that convenience is more important for you, you may want to go with pre-cut veggies or pre-cut fruits to make sure that the work is taken out of it and you can just, you know, enjoy as soon as you buy it. And then there is the debate of non-starchy versus starchy vegetables. In general, you want to try to get as much non-starchy vegetables as possible. So things like your dark leafy greens, etc. But starchy vegetables always have a place. So remember that all foods fit. So things like starchy vegetables like peas, corn, etc. you can still work into your diet, but remember that they are a source of carbs. So you want to try to balance out your meal with some other components in there. And lastly, just one tip that also helps is trying to include one fruit or vegetable with every meal and snack. And that way you can hit your 5 for the day. So that makes it super easy to get through your day and have something with you at every meal that's a fruit or vegetable. And then next I'm going to be sharing a snapshot at some of the other things that are available here. So here are some fruits and veggies, and at Trader Joe's there are a lot of things that are organic. So let's talk about organic, what that actually means, because a lot of people come to me and ask, hey, does organic mean that it's actually healthier? And well, actually, it just means that the food is not been chemically or genetically altered while it's been grown. And in order for something to be organic certified, 95% of the ingredients have to be organically produced. So that's when you see that certification on there. In general, I recommend trying to avoid the dirty dozen, because these are the foods that typically have the most pesticides when you see foods that are organic. So things like strawberries, spinach, nectarines, apples, peaches, pears, cherries, grapes, celery, tomato, sweet bell peppers, potatoes. These are the types of fruits and veggies that typically have more pesticides in there. But remember that organic does not necessarily mean that it's pesticide free. So always wash your produce. Make sure you get either a veggie wash or just wash it over water before you actually consume it. And recognize that organic is based on perceived health benefits, and it's a lifestyle preference. So if you prefer things that are more natural, not treated with pesticides, then organic is going to be a good fit for you, but not necessarily healthier because it's organic. Next, I will go through juices and smoothies. All right, so juicing is such a big trend, and I often get asked, are juices good for you, or smoothies good for you, etc. So typically, juicing in the traditional sense, if you put it through a juicer or just extract the juice from fruits, it's concentrated in calories because you're squeezing just that juice, and you're taking the fiber out of it. So think about like an orange, a set of oranges that are going through to become orange juice. There's gonna be less fiber because you're taking the pulp out of it, removing it, and just drinking the juice. Where I see juicing being beneficial is as a starting point. So if you absolutely don't like fruits and veggies, super easy to just stuff things like celery, oranges, apples, etc. in a juicer. But cleanses are not healthy. You have your liver for that. Your liver is essentially a way to be able to detox. You don't need to do a separate detox just to lose weight or be healthier. Smoothies, on the other hand, are a great option if you are looking to incorporate a couple of extra fruits, veggies, and perhaps even some protein into your diet. So think about a smoothie as a formula. So you've got your base. So if you're a milk drinker, you've got milk. If you prefer dairy alternatives, then you could add things like almond milk, coconut milk, soy milk, etc. So that's your base. And then you add some sort of fruit or vegetable in there. So that's where you can choose based on your preference. You can do things like strawberry kiwi. You can add some kale in there, spinach, apple, whatever fruits and veggies are your favorite. So that's a fun place where you can be creative. And then lastly, a boost. So that's where designer protein is really great, because if you just had a tough workout, for example, or if you need a quick meal replacement, you can add in protein and make it a filling meal, because from your base and your fruits and veggies, you're not going to get the protein to be able to satisfy your protein needs for that meal. So that's where that boost is really helpful. So think about your base, your fruits and veggies, and your boost as you make your smoothie. And designer protein really makes it easy. So at Trader Joe's, I mentioned, we have designer whey protein offered in 2 flavors, but there's other types of protein to meet your needs too. So if you're plant-based, there's plant options, there's egg, there's soy, there's a designer protein for everyone to be able to use as a boost. And so that's where a boost can be helpful when you're looking at smoothies. In general, as you navigate this aisle, you'll see a lot of pulpless juices, and you won't see a lot of smoothies that actually contain protein. And they tend to be on the expensive side too. So if you're looking for something that's rich in vitamins and minerals and still provides you with the protein needs, then it's best to just make a smoothie at home with your favorite fruits, veggies, boost, and a base. So next, we will navigate to the meats, fish, and protein aisle. Lots of foods that can be found here, and meat and fish a lot of times get a bad rep, but they are a high quality source of protein, and they serve essential needs in your body. So protein is made of things called amino acids. They're essentially building blocks that make up protein, and protein helps you retain and build lean muscle in your body. And a lot of times some of these meats and fish and other proteins that you find here are going to be good sources of zinc, iron, selenium, and some B vitamins. So moderate high quality protein, whether it's plant-based or meat-based, can help you feel full and maintain your energy levels throughout the day. So a couple of things to keep in mind when you're looking at different meat selections. Try to choose the leanest cut that's available of beef, pork, poultry, you name it. The fat that's in meat contains saturated fat, and those are the fats that are linked to clogging up your arteries and raising your bad cholesterol in your body. So you want to try to minimize the saturated fat calories that you get. And if you look at the term loin, it's generally synonymous with lean. So inspect the meat anyway, but if you see that term on there, you're probably good to go. And if for whatever reason you can't find meats here that are fat-free or minimized in fat, you can try to look at the ones that you can trim away the fat with a knife when you get home too. So a couple of options to try to keep meat lean as possible. And next, try to choose the most natural meats possible, where it's minimizing your chances of getting chemical preservatives in there. So again, like when I talked about organic, I mentioned it is a lifestyle choice. So if you want to try to get things like grass-fed meat, organic meat, that's a personal preference, but it avoids the cows and chickens, etc., that are grain-fed versus grass-fed, and some people have a taste preference on which one tastes better as well. For fish, a general rule of thumb is to try to get fish 2 times a week. And that's because fish contains omega-3 fatty acids that reduce inflammation, support brain health, and other great functions in your body. So if you're not an avid fish person, just know that there is a lot of great omega-3s in here, and you can try to compensate with flaxseed and other sources of omega-3, but fish is such a great source of that and some of the healthy fats that you won't get anywhere else. If you are a person who likes fish, consider getting wild-caught salmon versus farm-raised ones, because farm fish typically contain dyes. So when you see salmon, it's orange, and it's not a natural color that occurs. So it's best to try to stick to wild-caught salmon as much as possible. Same with some other fish where there might be artificial dyes or other things that are added in. So best to go with wild-caught. And then deli meats, always controversial, but again, seek it out in its more natural form. So on the front, you should see things like no nitrates, and look for short, familiar words on the ingredient list. So if you pick up deli meat and it's got a bunch of ingredients in there that you don't recognize, then that might not be a good choice. And then a common question that I typically get is how much protein is actually enough? So if you look at the palm of your hand, and everyone's palms are a little different, your palm is about 3 ounces. So that's the amount that you should typically try to shoot for at every meal, 1 to 2 servings. So 1 or 2 palmfuls, depending on your weight, your age, your activity level, etc. So that can come from, again, meats, designer protein, or any other supplement, or plant-based sources like beans and legumes as well. As far as eggs, they always get a bad rep because of the dietary cholesterol that they contain, but like I mentioned, there is now research that shows that dietary cholesterol does not necessarily translate into blood cholesterol. So eggs are great. Egg substitutes don't typically have the protein in there, and they remove the fatty yolk in there, and thus some of the vitamin content that typically comes with eggs as well. So eggs are not an evil to be avoided if you are on an animal-based diet and not a plant-based diet. And then as far as plant-based proteins, the biggest thing to watch out for in this aisle is the amount of sodium and other ingredients that are added to things. So things like tofu, for example, don't have much added in there. There's also great choices of beans and legumes where you can get some plant-based protein. Miracle noodles are really popular, so those are made of mushrooms. There's also tempeh and some other brands that offer meat-like plant-based protein as well. But if you look at these and you look at the label, a lot of times these foods are going to be higher in sodium. So try to check the label before you actually buy it, and when possible, try to get things like lentils, legumes, beans, and tofu, where a lot of the extra fluff is not included in there. So next, I'm gonna go to the dairy aisle. Lots of things here. So starting with yogurt, because there's a lot of yogurt and some eggs there. Yogurt's actually an excellent source of calcium and protein in your diet. A lot of people avoid it for carbs, but if you look at the nutrition label on yogurt, a lot of the carbs are naturally occurring because milk contains a natural sugar called lactose. So a lot of the carbs are from there. But when you look at some of the added sugars to yogurt, they tend to be high in some other sources as well. So you'll see a lot of the yogurts that have fruit on the bottom. There's also yogurts that have honey or other sugar, high fructose corn syrup added in there. And it's typically also regarded as just a breakfast item or a snack item throughout the day, but you can actually use it for baking too in lieu of oil. So, and it can be used for different dessert items as well. So keep that in mind as you're looking at the yogurt there. The best type of yogurt to go after in this aisle is typically plain yogurt. And that doesn't mean you have to necessarily eat it plain, because you can take plain yogurt home and add nuts, seeds, and fruit to it as much as you desire. But make sure you look at the ingredients as well. And Greek yogurt is really popular. It's a creamy, higher protein alternative to the soupy yogurt. So if you want to try to get more protein in your diet and you prefer the texture that's a little bit more thicker instead of soupy and watery, then Greek yogurt might be a great choice for you as well. Just a quick note on light yogurts that contain protein. A lot of times they're lower in calories because the sugar content is cut out, but it also means that there's other things like artificial sweeteners added in, and potentially even, other things to try to compensate for the lack of calories and the fat in there. So just make sure to check the label before you buy a yogurt. Next, we're going to go to cheese. And cheese at Trader Joe's, if you know, you know, there's so many different selections, and cheese can be enjoyed with any meal or snack as a good source of protein and fat in moderation. So as you look at some of the different cheeses that are in this aisle, try to choose cheeses that have reduced fat and are made with no chemical, color, or preservatives in there. The more natural, the better. And there's a lot of low sodium cheese choices too, because cheese is generally frowned upon for being salty and having a lot of sodium, but there's cheeses like Swiss and mozzarella, especially fresh mozzarella, that you can cut up and have with some other foods as part of your meal. They're great for snacking, helps boost your protein intake, or it goes really well in a sandwich as you navigate your day. And something weird that a lot of folks don't know is that cheese is actually naturally creamy white. So when you walk down this aisle, there's a lot of bright orange cheeses. You see some in this photo as well. Those are actually dyed in color. So look for cheeses that have natural coloring as much as possible. And keep in mind that that's not the natural color that cheese normally comes with. Ricotta is also low in fat, so another great cheese to choose. It's derived from the whey part of the milk, so you can try to spread it on whole grain or an English muffin or other things, or maybe some whole grain crackers as a snack as well. Feta or reduced fat feta has a strong flavor, but it's enjoyable, so you can enjoy it with crackers and other things as well, or put in your salad. And it's naturally lower in lactose for those of you who are that are lactose intolerant. And cottage cheese too. So I don't really count this as a cheese in the traditional sense, but it is a great source of protein. And the only thing to watch out for here again is that it can be high in sodium. So make sure to squeeze it in moderation and watch your sodium intake for the remainder of the day. Next, we'll go to butter and margarine. Okay, so there is such a great debate on different spreadable fats, and is butter good for you, is margarine good for you, etc. And typically you want to look at the types of fats that are in there. So you want to try to avoid fats that contain trans fats. Anything that has hydrogenated or partially hydrogenated oil contains trans fats, and trans fats in your body can raise your bad blood cholesterol and lower your good cholesterol at the same time. So it's a double whammy when it comes to your blood cholesterol. So it clogs up your arteries and gets rid of the good stuff that's in there. But ultimately it comes to taste. I like to recommend oils as much as possible over solid fats, because that's where you're going to see more of the healthier fats in your body, instead healthier fats that translate to good fats in your body instead of the trans fats and the saturated fats. And personally, I'm a big fan of things that are plant-based in the oil section, which we'll go through later. And dairy alternatives, just a quick note on dairy alternatives for milk. There's so many out there, from almond to soy to rice to coconut, sometimes even hemp milk. And the only thing to watch out for there is that they're generally lower in protein. So check the protein content before you buy, because milk has milk proteins that are naturally higher in that protein content. You won't get that just extracted from seeds or nuts, for instance. So, and the calcium and the vitamin D that you see in there are fortified because they don't naturally occur in things like coconuts. So if you are getting almond milk, for example, which I'm a big fan of because I'm lactose intolerant, so I can't have a ton of lactose and milk content, I try to, if I'm having my nightly milk of almond milk, I try to add designer protein in there so that it's got a good source of protein in there, and it's almost like having a glass of milk without getting the digestive effects of drinking milk itself. Next, we'll go to grains and starches. So lots of foods in this aisle. In general, you want to shoot for whole grain because that contains the bran. And the bran is where vitamins, minerals, the fiber is found, and the nutty flavor that you typically get from whole grain foods as well. So if you choose white bread, that's where a lot of the fiber and the nutrients are stripped because the bran has been removed and it's just the kernel that's inside. And so when you choose whole grains, you're getting more of the benefits in there. And there's a lot of talk on ancient grains that are whole grains too. They're being marketed as healthier, but ultimately they're whole grains, and they're a great way to diversify what you're cooking with your meals instead of just having rice or pasta, which can get boring. And when it comes to fiber, it can do a couple of different things. So fiber can help you stay full throughout the day, and it helps stave off hunger too. So it promotes healthy digestion, keeps you full, and you're gonna have to search the nutrition labels. So the nutrition label we went through earlier, the designer protein had 3 grams of dietary fiber. So you wanna look for the dietary fiber that's in grains, and if it's not high in fiber, you may want to consider a different grain to choose. As a general rule of thumb, as you look at a grain, try to choose something that has over 5 grams of fiber in that serving and with as few added sugars as possible. And added sugar can be disguised in different ways too. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be table sugar. It's going to be masked as high fructose corn syrup, brown sugar, corn syrup, fructose, honey, dextrose, you name it. So sugar comes in different names as well. And then next we'll talk about gluten-free. If I can pull up my gluten-free grains here. All right, and Trader Joe's has a big selection of gluten-free grains. The reality of gluten-free is that most consumers don't actually need to be gluten-free. I do hear a lot of clients that lose weight as a result of going gluten-free, but think about some of the foods that you're removing from your diet as a result of being gluten-free. So you're cutting out things like donuts and cookies and brownies and that pizza that you love. So all of those things are gone from a gluten-free diet, and as a result, you're saving a lot of calories. But for people that live with celiac disease, this is a nutrition prescription. So it's a therapy to help alleviate the inflammation and the effects that you get from celiac disease. So it is a trending diet, which is good for people with celiac disease because you can walk into Trader Joe's and there's so many different foods that are gluten-free that are available for you. But if you feel that you have a gluten sensitivity, but not necessarily celiac disease, talk to your dietitian about getting a food sensitivity or an allergy test to see if this is something that you actually need to restrict. Now we'll go to cereals and granola. And the biggest watch out here is that cereals and granola are a typical breakfast item, but they are jam-packed with added sugars. So try to avoid added sugar as much as possible. When possible, I like to actually choose steel-cut oats over cereal because most cereals tend to be higher in sugar content. And make sure that the first ingredient that's listed on there for that cereal is whole grain. So things to watch out for: added sugar, make sure there's enough fiber, and that the first ingredient there is whole grain. And then we'll talk about some of the canned and processed foods and a couple of things to cover there. But in general, when you look at canned vegetables, they're going to be higher in sodium. So look for alternatives that are either marked low sodium, no added salt, or if you can't necessarily find something that's low in sodium, buy it and then rinse it out a couple of times before you eat it, and you should be able to minimize the sodium content that's in there. So now that we've navigated the majority of the outside of the aisle, we're navigating the inside of the aisles where more of the processed foods can be found. So first, starting with soups. Trader Joe's has a great soup selection. Again, try to choose low sodium varieties. Things like low sodium broth, etc. are great to incorporate in as part of meals. But whenever you are choosing soups, make sure that they contain as few ingredients as possible and contain low sodium. Same goes for pastas and sauces, and again, Trader Joe's has a very robust variety here. Try to choose whole grain pastas whenever possible, and there's also plant-based pastas too, so you'll see things like lentil pasta that are popping up and really cool to try out to see if they stack up to the real thing. And in terms of sauces, Alfredo tends to be higher in fat and calories, so if you can go with an oil-based one, or even just add olive oil and a little bit of Parmesan, that goes a long way. If not, marinara is going to be lower in calories, but you get still some of the benefits of tomatoes, and then Alfredo is higher in fat and calories. So next, we will go to nuts and seeds here. You can buy a lot of nuts and seeds in bulk or packaging at Trader Joe's, which is great. A lot of, in general, nuts and seeds are high in unsaturated fats, which are going to be your fats that raise your good blood cholesterol. The only thing to look for here, and I feel like I say that about all the different packaged foods that you find in the aisles, is to watch the salt content. So you want to choose ones that are unsalted or lightly salted when you choose nuts and seeds in this aisle. And chips and crackers, highly debated because people like their veggie straws or some of the veggie chips that are out there, but even though they have some vitamins and minerals from veggies, they're still chips, so they're going to be high in salt cravings. So one question that I did get is, how do we stave salt cravings and make sure that we control quantities while still meeting that craving? One great tip is if you buy a big bag of chips, portion it out into little Ziploc bags as much as possible, or little tubs that you have in the house, to make sure that it's portioned out and you stick to the serving size that's on the label instead of just eating right out of the bag. Same goes with things like popcorn, because it's so easy to just eat things like this out of the bag, and it's harder to stop. And if possible, you can also try your hand at making chips at home. So kale chips are among some of my favorites, where you can just lightly brush it with oil and some salt or whatever seasoning you want and just stick it in the oven. You can do the same with things like carrots, sweet potatoes, etc., to try to get more natural chips into your diet that aren't so heavily processed. Next, we'll go to oils here. So here you'll see a lot of great things. My personal favorites are olive oil, avocado oil, and coconut oil. The plant-based oils are typically higher in unsaturated fats that contain heart-healthy fats for your body. But coconut oil does contain some saturated fats, but the great thing about it is that it contains medium chain triglycerides, which are absorbed and used more efficiently in the body. And there's a lot of emerging research that shows that it can support metabolism. So it's been a popular source of oil, and one that I personally love for cooking because it just makes everything taste better as well. Next we'll go to beverages here. So Trader Joe's typically has healthier beverages, so you won't see a lot of the energy and sports drinks. These are like your healthier, better for you beverages that you see here. So a couple things that I'll point out. There's a lot of probiotic drinks. So there's kefir, kombucha, things that contain probiotics to help with your digestion. And then there is also coconut oil. So it is, or coconut water. So coconut water is the liquid found in the middle of the coconut, while coconut milk is made from the meat on the outside, like the inside shell of the coconut. And coconut water is low in calories and high in potassium, so it's almost like a sports drink, like having a Gatorade, but in a natural form. And then there's some fermented drinks as well. Again, these are great sources of probiotics, and it leaves good bacteria in your gut that help break down sugars, such as lactose, to help with your digestion. So next we'll go to one of my favorites, supplements. So first I will share Designer Whey. So when it comes to supplements, I like to say stack them if you need them. So personally for me, I love Designer Whey protein because I'm a powerlifter, and I try to go on as much hikes as possible. So it's a great way to incorporate protein in my day, especially if I'm having plant-based meals. So at my local Trader Joe's in Colorado, it is $11.99. So it roughly is about $1.09 per serving. And in this gourmet chocolate version, there's 20 grams of protein. It's made with a full spectrum of peptides, so you'll get complete protein out of there. Plus there's things like glutamine, leucine, taurine, and phenylalanine to help with your recovery after your workout. So these are, essential amino acids to help with recovery and help you build muscle. And most protein shakes don't actually have things that help support your digestion. So if you drink just like your regular protein shake, you can actually get very constipated because there's a lot of vitamins and minerals and protein, but there's no fiber. But in this case, there's a probiotic blend and dietary fiber that's in there to help with your digestion. And then lastly, there's a B vitamin complex to help with energy and metabolism, as well as some other essential vitamins and minerals as well. One of my favorite things is that it's also low in sugar. There's only 1 gram of added sugar in this chocolate, and I believe the vanilla as well. So it's one of my favorite things when I'm looking at a protein shake. It has to be high in protein, it has to be quality protein, which Designer Protein provides, and then it has to be low in sugar. So that's Designer Whey in a nutshell. And then Aria, this is a women's wellness protein, and let me just pull it up here. It's a little cheaper at $9.99. It's got 15 grams of non-GMO, delicious, natural protein, so it's a little bit less than you get from the whey. So if you're moderately active versus like your competitive athlete, Aria might be a great choice for you. It also contains nutrients that are really great for us ladies, so this one goes out to the ladies, right? So it's got things like biotin and vitamin C for healthy, youthful looking skin, hair, and nails, so it really helps you get that natural glow on top of all the healthy food and that you're eating and the workouts that you're incorporating in. Plus it's got things like calcium, vitamin D, and phosphorus to help with your bone health so that you stay strong, and folate to help with cell and tissue growth in your body. And lastly, it's got pre and post biotics. And so again, if you are used to typical protein that makes you feel a little bit gassy, this one is not going to be the case. It helps with your digestion. So really great one for the ladies, and it's got low calories, so it's easy to incorporate into anything that you eat. You can have it standalone, or you can have it in a smoothie and mix it up with fruits and veggies like some of the smoothies that I talked about earlier. Or you can use it for things like baking. So if you've got a sweet tooth, then you can easily incorporate it into your diet and satisfy your sweet tooth at the same time. One of my favorite things is that these tubs are actually not that big, so I take them with me to the gym as post-workout fuel, so I don't have to wait until I get home. And I also like to make little protein balls with it, so you can mix it with things like, you can mix it with nut butters of your favorite choice, and be able to incorporate it in as snacks, or you can bake with it as well. So a lot of really great options to incorporate in either Aria or Designer Whey into your diet. And one other aisle that I like to go through is ethnic food. So Trader Joe's has done a really great job of providing you basically a tour around the world when it comes to a lot of different foods. There's a lot of excitement and curiosity, and there's new foods that are constantly being added on here. And they're popular with foodies for sure. They're great to try out. Some of my favorite ethnic foods as I go through the frozen and fresh aisles here are things that are high in probiotics. So you'll see a lot of foods that come from other cultures that are actually high in probiotics, like kimchi. You'll also find ways to diversify what you're currently cooking. So as you look to your seasonings and flavors, there's a lot of fun things that you can do to spice up your routine from what you're doing instead of the boring salt and pepper. So lots of great seasonings to try there and add different things to your repertoire. So if you have friends that are from other parts of the country or from the world, it's always great to get their recommendation on what ethnic foods they would like to recommend to you, because there's a lot of great flavor and taste that you can incorporate into your diet. And the Trader Joe's, again, has so many different things that you can pick up that are really cool and you won't find anywhere else. And then continuing on into the frozen aisle, there's a lot of fruits and veggies that are also frozen, and something that I commonly get questions on. So frozen versus canned veggies, first of all. Frozen veggies are a great option, and they typically tend to be cheaper than getting something that's fresh. So of course, getting fresh veggies is great, but if you're like me, you slack on cooking fresh veggies and then they all go bad by the end of the week. So I actually really like frozen veggies, like things like Brussels sprouts, broccoli, etc., to pick up in this aisle. And they're frozen at the point of freshness, so you don't have to worry about them going bad, and they're still a great option for you and packed with essential vitamins and minerals. And then frozen fruits, again, tend to be typically cheaper actually than getting fresh fruits and vegetables. Depending on what part of the country you live, you might also have seasonal fruits and veggies where things aren't always available, or they're available but they look like they're withering away, or they go bad within 2 days of getting it and putting it in your fridge. So frozen fruits are great to add to your repertoire, especially for things like smoothies. So my favorite go-to smoothie is just mixing up some almond milk with frozen berries for the antioxidants that are in there, with some designer protein to be able to get all my essential nutrients, including protein, fiber, and all the vitamins and minerals that go in there too. And Trader Joe's does a good job of looking at some of these toppings here too. So in addition to designer protein being available, you can find things like chia seed and flaxseed, as you'll find here. They try to look at things that are complementary to each other. So they've thought about what kind of smoothies people might like and incorporated them on there. And as it goes for other foods, you'll see a lot of ice cream, desserts, etc. All foods fit into your diet, but try to have some of these in moderations as you watch things like your calories. Make sure you're getting the most nutrient-dense foods in your diet, but of course, anything here and there can be appropriate. So don't limit yourself. If you want to have a frozen tub of ice cream here and there, go for it. Next, we'll go through ready-to-eat foods. And there's a variety of frozen and fresh ready-to-eat foods as you go through Trader Joe's. So limits are, there's no limits when you walk into Trader Joe's, right? So some foods are sold by weight. So be mindful of things that are heavy and may actually cost a lot of money to get. And then there's other things like sandwiches and salads. But so weigh how much convenience you value versus the nutrition value of different foods, and how much time it would actually take for you to make something at home. Things that are helpful in aisles like this are things like rotisserie chicken or quick meals that you can grab and go. But remember, we talked about before you go into the grocery store, try to plan ahead and have meals planned out and snacks planned out ahead of time. So if you've done your planning, then you can make your own grab and go. So before you even walk out of the house, you can grab whatever is in the fridge and prepared and ready to go instead of spending all that money. But again, it's a personal choice, and Trader Joe's does offer a lot of different foods that at your fingertips that offer convenience and let you walk out with good choices if you don't feel like cooking tonight. And lastly, I'll talk about just general tips. So in general, I think you've heard that it's good to get a variety of different foods in your diet. So look at the different food groups from fruits, veggies, dairy or dairy alternatives, meat, fish, and trying to shut the perimeter of the store and sticking to fresh, wholesome foods as much as possible. But at the same time, allow some indulgences. So if you want to indulge on a little bit and get some chips here and there, that's okay. Just try to balance out the rest of your day and plan ahead. So if you, instead of snacking on chips at night, if you can incorporate it in as an afternoon snack and it's already accounted for, you can be mindful of some of the other foods that you're eating throughout the day. And incorporate healthy staples like designer protein in your diet. For me personally, I struggle because if I am only getting plant-based sources in a day, then I don't get enough protein to meet my needs for the athletic activity that I partake in. So I try to have designer protein on hand in my gym bag, in the pantry, available pretty much anytime to be able to have throughout the day, either as a meal replacement, a post-workout snack, or in the evening when I'm getting some sweet cravings, because that gourmet chocolate actually really tastes like chocolate, which is awesome. And in terms of meal planning, make sure that you do your prep. So you've probably seen a lot of people do what's called meal prepping. So that's when you pick meat, grain, and some sort of vegetable, and you prepare for the week. And that's actually a really great strategy, so that you have something on hand at all times. But variety is key there. So instead of eating chicken and broccoli every single week, try to vary it up a little bit and try something new and different. You can experiment with some different spices and sauces from all around the world, which Trader Joe's is really good for. And have your go-to recipes. So if you see something that you like on Instagram or YouTube, save that for later and try to replicate it as much as you can if you know that you like the taste of it. And lastly, we're all human and practice makes perfect. So we're not going to get everything right the first time. And I will say it is a lot easier to shop from an app or shop online for your groceries and to go into the store to actually do it, because there's so many temptations. When you're on your app, it doesn't say, did you want that Sour Patch Kids? You kind of go through your laundry list of what you want for that week and what you need, and specifically shop for those. When you go into the store hungry, then you are going to be faced with a lot more temptations and impulse buys, so just be mindful of that and give yourself a little bit of grace. At the end of the day, think about food as fuel, but it's okay to have a donut here and there. Just try to make healthy choices the majority of the time. So that is it as far as our live grocery store tour. Again, thank you so much for joining. A couple things that I'll point out. There is a giveaway. So for those of you who are just joining and weren't at the beginning of the Instagram Live, there is a Trader Joe's bundle, and there's 3 that we're going to be giving away. So there is a designer Whey gourmet chocolate. There's a designer whey, French vanilla, and a shaker bottle, and Aria women's protein. So all of those things are in that bundle, and we'll be choosing 3 winners total. So check out my Instagram. I will provide a post tomorrow, and after a couple of days, Designer Protein will be picking the winners there. And if you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. Hopefully this was helpful, and just know that we are here for you. Designer Protein is a really great choice to incorporate into your grocery shopping trip. So next time you're at Trader Joe's, check it out. Thanks so much, guys, and have a great evening.